Our UFC 300 special. And guys, it's time for our proper 12 smooth move of the month. And this month for UFC 300, we are celebrating the greatest moments in UFC history. Guys, if I were to ask you what your favorite smooth moves were in the history of the octagon, what might they be?
Oh, man, there's so many great things we've seen in the octagon. One that does stand out, because I'm a big fan of Demetrius Johnson.
Yeah.
And he's, I think he's one of the best fighters we've ever had in the UFC. That's how good he is. And I don't think he gets enough hype with how good he is. But that flying armbar they did, or he's like the trip into the armbar, the way he did that, technically just beautiful. To do that in a title fight as well, incredible, man. Really is. And that's something that, I think I'll definitely be remembering. I try some of that stuff in the gym because he's, so, you know what I mean? I don't pull it off like he does, but it was quite impressive.
It's like an instinct thing, isn't it? Because, like, obviously you can train those moves separately hundreds of times in the gym, but for him to pull it off in a transition, in a scramble, the way he did, I can see why it's your favourite.
In the title fight as well, you know what I mean? It's crazy. That's what I mean. Like, I do, though. I do have one. I've got this nice sweep into an armbar. I think his looks better, but I'm getting there.
Rob? I'm going to go with Conor McGregor beating Jose Aldo the way he did, in the fashion that he did, for a couple reasons, okay? The first one is going to be because of how monumental the change was at the time, how significant that win was for McGregor and the build-up and lead-up into that fight. Like, that would have to be one of the biggest fights to date ever in any sport. Like, it is just unreal. But I think something that gets downplayed a little bit about Conor McGregor is just how good he is at striking. His eyes, his precision, his instincts, his accuracy, pinpoint precision. And we saw that earlier with when he became the double champ. And he's just so good at what he does. And the way he did it, the style he did it, the speed in which he did it, made him, it cemented his legacy to who he is today.
Well, that was like pretty much the beginning of one of the biggest star the UFC's ever seen, you know what I mean? Probably combat sports. Like, he's an absolute superstar, and that was the beginning of it. That fight was incredible. Like you said, the hype all around it, and then for him to do it the way he did it, incredible.
It's a massive thing to be able to talk the talk. Anybody who owns an Xbox can talk the talk, right? It's walking it. It's about doing what you say. It's about going through with what you've just threatened everybody about. And he did that in spades. He did it against Aldo. He did it against Alvarez. He became the double champ, and he is who he is because of it, I guess.
Well, a UFC 300 show wouldn't be complete without respecting the legends of the past, and I'm pleased to announce that we do have UFC royalty joining the show right now. So here is my chat with the one and only Georges St-Pierre. George, thank you so much for your time. What an honor it is to be able to speak with you.
Well, thank you for having me here, guys.
Not a problem at all. Now, George, UFC 300 is this weekend, and it gives us an opportunity to not only celebrate what's going on in the UFC right now, George, but take a look at the past and the moments that made the UFC what it is today. And you were certainly a front and center of so many of those moments. George, if I were to ask you to look back on your career right now and think of a moment that sticks out perhaps as your favorite, what might it be?
Well, I'm not sure. I think the first time I won the world title in Sacramento was very special for me because it was the first time. So if I had to choose one, I think it would be the one.
Absolutely, what a moment. And, we are, of course, all about celebrating, those moments here on Fox Sports. And, that moment certainly sticks out for me as well. I think, of course, of Anderson Silva's front kick to the face of Vitor Belfort, those moments that really make, the UFC, or moments that encapsulate what the UFC is all about. If just as a fan, George, if I were to ask you just generally, was there a fighter or a moment that sticks out to you, maybe someone that you enjoyed watching or something that sticks out to you as embodying the UFC ethos?
Well, what sticks out to me the most is when an underdog is able to defy all the odds and win. One of my losses was against Matt Serra, and it was a great performance by Matt Serra. He beat me the night that I fought him, he fought a better fight, and that's why he beat me. And I think it shows that in not only in fighting, in every sport, it's not necessarily the best fighter or the best team that wins the game or the fight. It's the fighter that fight the best and perform the best the night of the fight. So that's what makes it so interesting. Like I'm thinking about there has been a lot of upset in the sport, and I think that's what makes it fun. Because if we would always know who would win, it would be kind of boring. So I think that's what makes it fun in a way.
Can I just say, it speaks to the kind of character that you are, George, speaks to the great Canadian humility that you might pick a moment that you lost as a moment that sticks out for you, but you're all class as always. And, I think that's one of, go on.
It doesn't stick out positively for me, but I think the fans can appreciate that it defies the odds. There's tons of moments like this. I just picked mine because it's obvious for me, but there was a lot of other one. Like I remember Amanda Nunes, when she lost the first time, everybody was shocked. When Chris Weidman knocked out Anderson Silva, same thing. Everybody was shocked. So these are the moment, I think, that made the sport look good, because it defies the odds.
It's an incredibly storied history, and George, I think your attitude is one of the reasons that people regard you as the greatest of all time. Can I ask, do you agree with them, or is there somebody else maybe that you regard as the greatest to step into the UFC octagon?
For me, the greatest of all time is Royce Gracie, because he has done things for his time that I don't think will ever be done again. However, if you ask me if I put Royce in the octagon right now, if he would do well, I don't think so, because the sports has evolved. So if you ask me who's the greatest of all time, he's probably not even born yet, because the sport keeps on getting better and better every day. So.
Absolutely, and the UFC is stronger, and the quality of athletes, I think, is almost, as good as it's ever been, and it continues to get better and better. But I just want to ask you about that a little bit, George. Something that sticks out for me in your career, and I guess the same for so many of the athletes that came through around that golden era. I think, of course, of George, not only yourself, but John Jones with 13 title defenses, yourself with 9 title defenses, Demetrius Johnson with 11, Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo. The list does indeed go on. The longevity of title reign. Why do you think, George, that we don't see that as often these days? I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing, but why, for you, in your mind, do we not see these long-standing champions as much these days?
Well, it's hard to become champion, but it's even harder to stay champion, because once you're champion, you're the target. So you don't only fight, you're not only going up against one guy, you're going up against the entire roster, because everybody's looking at you, because they're studying you, because you're on top of the hill. When you're on top of the hill, you have only one opponent to watch out for, because you don't know what is going to be next after this one. So you have only a certain amount of time to prepare for one particular guy. But those guys who are coming up, they've been looking at you and try to find a chink in your armor for years. So therefore, they have more time to prepare for you, for your style. So they have more time to solve the problem than you have to solve theirs. So that's why they have an advantage on you. So therefore, it's much harder to stay champion once you're there than once you're a contender to become champion.
Well, George, I think that speaks to just how amazing you guys were in that golden era, remaining champions for 7, 8, 9 years even. But George, that is the past. And now we can look ahead to the future. And as I mentioned, UFC 300 is this weekend. It's Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill in the main event. Can I get your opinion on that fight?
Well, it's going to be very interesting. I mean, Alex Pereira has probably more experience in pure kickboxing. So if the fight is a clean stand-up fight, I think we would be forced to give the edge of Pereira. However, if we see a lot of scramble or wrestling and different stuff that are outside of the realm of kickboxing, I think we can give the edge of Jamal Hill, because he's very well-rounded. But will he use it, or will he be content to just go out there and fight a kickboxing fight against a kickboxing champion, which I think it would be a bad idea. But I think we're up for a very, very good night on Saturday night.
Absolutely, and we can't wait to see it. Speaking of champions, George, I did want to ask you about one of my co-hosts on this show, Robert Whittaker. He spoke to our friends at Submission Radio very recently and said that, well, he was asked about dream matchups and said he would love to have fought you. Well, we know how close that fight was to taking place many years ago. Can I ask you about that? Would you have loved to test yourself against the great Robert Whittaker?
Well, I always have a hard time fighting guys that I like. I was always at my best when I was fighting guys that I have a certain animosity with. But I would have done it for the sport. Unfortunately, I was forced to retire because I developed a condition called ulcer colitis.
Yes.
And at the time, I could have kept the title for a year and parade with it and gain all the sponsors and everything. But for the respect of the contenders, I decided to really relinquish it because I knew I was not able to fight. I needed to take care of my health. And the good news is now I'm 100%, no more symptoms, and my life is good. But yeah, Robert is going up against Chimaev next, and I wish him the best of luck.
Well, two things there, George. First of all class. But I did want to ask you, just that fight that you mentioned there, the Khamzat Chimaev fight coming up for Robert in June in the Middle East. Can I ask you what your thoughts are on that matchup?
Well, if there is a guy that can stop Chimaev, is Robert Whittaker, because if you look at Chimaev, he has we can compare it in a way to Yoel Romero. Romero was a very good wrestler, very explosive and powerful guy, and Whittaker was the kryptonite of Yoel Romero, was able to beat him twice. So stylistically, he's very capable of doing the same to Chimaev, to make Chimaev look bad. Robert Whittaker have a very unusual style. He's from a karate background, like I do. Karate background, we have very different style. We use different timings to blitz in, and the way we control the distance, it seems very unusual for our opponent, because most of guys in mixed martial art world are from kickboxing and Muay Thai background. So when you're from karate, I think that's one of the things that it gives you sort of an edge. And Robert Whittaker utilized all his karate skill very, very well, and his footwork and the control of the distance. He's a master at it. So I think if there's a guy to stop Chimaev now that has a possibility to do so, is Robert Whittaker, but he's gonna have to be on his A game, because Chimaev is no joke, and he seems unstoppable right now.
Well, we believe in Rob, and we can't wait to see him take to the octagon in June. And something else, George, that you mentioned in your previous answer, you mentioned you fought better against guys with whom you had a bit of animosity. Can I just ask who in particular you might have been referencing? Did you mean Nick or Michael Bisping there?
I always felt that I perform at my best when I'm on the edge, when my honor, everything, I have more at stakes. And I don't know why. Some guys, the pressure make them crumble. Me, it kind of elevate me, and I always shine better when I'm under pressure.
Okay, well, I won't push you on who specifically that was, but George, it's so great to see you.
Oh, there's a lot of guys. Like if you Michael Bisping, Matt Serra, Josh Koscheck, Nick Diaz. There's a ton of it. But you know that what is funny is a lot of these guys that I had a lot of animosity with while I was competing against. Now I'm friend with them. So now we start on a big rivalry, and now we're friends. So it's a good thing.
I can imagine it's very easy as a fighter to be friends with Georges St-Pierre. You're a hard guy not to love, and everybody in the MMA community certainly has a lot of respect for you. George, it is so great to see you happy and well. And, I've seen a lot of what you're doing online. You're into your cold plunges, your ice baths, your cold therapy, and your calisthenic exercises. And, George, you've actually teamed up with an Australian company called Base Blocks. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have a line from Base Block. It's called the Base Block Pro, and we had a huge success, especially during COVID, because people were locked in. and then they couldn't go to the gym. So we developed a brand of equipment that you could easily store in your house and you can use to train. And then once you're done, you can put it back in and it folds itself and it takes a minimum of space. And a lot of these equipment are outdoor friendly, so you can use it in your backyard. So it's kinesthetics, and that's the way I train.
George, what a pleasure it is. Thank you so much for your time on Fox Sports. It's always an honor being able to speak with you, and thank you for your time, and all the best, and enjoy the fights this weekend.
Thank you very much. Yes.
All class always, the great Georges St-Pierre. Rob, your response to that? It was very complimentary of you there.
Yeah, and let me just say, it was respectfully, like the utmost respect for George, and he's a fantasy fight of mine because of just how much respect I have for him and because of his caliber in the game. It was always respectfully. And much like he said, I do have a hard time fighting people I like as well. And I've always liked him. I've always gotten along with him. I've trained with him back in Montreal over a decade ago.
Really?
And and I'll never forget. I think we were doing some wrestling or some grappling, and mate, he just bashed me. Obviously this was a long time ago, and I had some holes to patch, but he was good. He was very good then. This was obviously when he was champion and still smacking people around. But I've always gotten along with him. I've always been a massive fan of his, and him speaking about my potential fight with Chimaev, I believe a lot of what he said is the honest truth, just in the sense that I do think my karate style is different for a lot of people. I think a lot of people find it tricky to deal with. Everyone says, "Oh, Robert just blitzes. Robert just blitzes." Well, why hasn't anybody really had an easy time with it? It's because there's tricks involved, right?
That's a good point.
And it's something I practice. And I think it is an element that a lot of people aren't used to because it's not a mainstream style of fighting. But also, I do have the wrestling defense under my belt. I do think he's going to be trying to push wrestling. That it has to be one of his greatest strengths. And it's going to be a hard fight.
Gents, I've got to thank you so much for your time. That is it for our UFC 300 special. Thank you at home for watching. Don't forget you can order the pay-per-view at mainevent.com.au. Sunday, midday, UFC 300 goes down. Unrivaled greatness. See you then.